Terrific. Thank you all for being here tonight. We have Ryan Rooney, who is an alumni of Central Michigan University, where he earned his undergraduate degrees in history and communication and a master's of communication. During his undergraduate studies, Ryan was a member of Phi Kappa Tau fraternity. Since graduating, he has held positions in various careers from juvenile corrections to the food and beverage industry. Currently, he works as a marketing professional in Salt Lake City. In his free time, he is an avid reader, loves taking care of his pets, and woodworking. Most of all, Ryan loves trying something new and chasing the next challenge. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Ryan.
I didn't expect that to be so formal, because if you take one glance at your screen, I'm clearly not the most formal person in the world. But yeah, my name's Ryan. And truthfully, I was on a plane for about 8.5, 9 hours yesterday while I was intending to make this a grand presentation with motivational videos and everything for you. But on that flight, I was kind of like, I think it's going to be a little more intimate. So with that, can I get a little knowledge on who we are as a group right now? Normally I would just ask it to be in the chat bar, but since it's, just a small group of us hanging out, if anybody wants to unmute and just introduce yourself, where your chapter is, and what you're going to school for.
Okay, I guess I'll be the only one, since I'm the only one. I'm Kaylor. I am the current consul of the Eta Gamma chapter here in San Angelo. West Texas, yeah. I'm going to school for social work. Yeah, I want to be a counselor.
Right on.
We'll see.
I'm Bob, and I'm a graduate from Beta chapter, which is Cornell, and I'm here. I'm an alumni volunteer.
Thanks, Bob.
I'm Bryan. I graduated from Christopher Newport University. I am a part of the professional staff team for KDR. I'm the director of character development, so I do a lot of the programs, new member education, recruitment, all that stuff. I was a communication studies major myself, so that's great. And then I master's in higher ed. So,
right on. Lauren, I don't know if you're there, but whenever you are, you can just interrupt me. So why am I here is really a question that I've been trying to answer all day. And the last couple of weeks leading up to this. And I think it really gets down to, I kind of have a weird philosophy on life and weird take towards mental wellness, professional wellness, and just development and things of the like. So, Kaylor, am I pronouncing your name right? Kaylor?
Yeah, yes.
Why social work?
I guess it's like my mom actually got me started into it actually, because for me, I'm a really good listener, and it's like, for me, I have my own problems, and when people talk to me about their problems, they always get so scared to talk about it because they think I'm going to judge them. It's like, no, I got my own stuff going on. It's like, I can't judge you, it's like we're our own human beings, and it's like we all go through our own troubles. And so especially during these times, I really push the ideas we need to stick together because we can't do this alone. And so yeah, I was like, pretty much is like I just been a really good listener, and it's like the advice that I would give to my mom and my friends is like they are normally really effective for them, and so it's like they would be a good a life changer for them, and so it's like, and it gives me so much motivation because I've never had that person to really push me in the right direction and be there when I would go fall down in life. And so that really gave me a motivation to what, I'll be that person for that someone that needs help, because everyone deserves help whether they want to admit or not. And it's and I'm pretty good, not pretty good, I'm gonna say I'm decent at noticing if something's wrong with someone based on how they talk to me, how they act around me, and their body language. And so I've learned a lot in the school and in my experiences in life. And so that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. So one thing you repeated quite a bit was you're a good listener.
Yeah.
Why do you think you're a good listener? Not this is important, not what makes you a good listener, but why do you think you're a good listener?
Oh. Oh my gosh. Dang, this guy's good. Oh, why do I make? Because since I know personally that it's like we all go through stuff in our lives, you know, I feel like no one really truly listens to people's issues because they can't relate or they can't get personable with them. And so for me, I was like, I do my best to be personable with them, because a person that actually really does listen to you, it can change their life forever, you know? And it's like, it may happen in a short time, but it's like, overall, is like, it will definitely change them just because someone just actually wants to sit down and just listen to someone just vent. If that answers the question.
That's beautiful, though.
Um,
I want to thank you for kind of engaging me in that real quick, because it highlights a lot of themes that I think about frequently when it comes to my personal career, my professional development, my relationships. It's really asking that question of why. And if you notice, I asked why twice, and we already got to that deep level of, oh, I really need to think about this. I need to get
Yeah.
to the point of why I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So a little background of me, and kind of, I hope it helps you understand where some of these mentalities that I'll talk about come from. And again, this is super important. So anytime you want to cut me off, ask a question about anything I'm saying, any stories from my experiences, anything like that, please just cut me off. I do have the chat bar open too, so if you want to type it there, I'm cool with that. But yeah, a little bit about me. I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in a pretty quiet community. Grand Rapids is nearing a million point whatever now, but I grew up in the small West Side, which is really a small town in a big city. I went to a Catholic high school and graduated with around 100 kids. In that high school, one thing you can know about me is I got 48 detentions because my hair was too long and I wasn't willing to change. And that's important because it brings up later from high school. Well, I guess in high school too, I started working at the age of 13. I was a club washer at a golf course by my house. From there, I started understanding what it meant to be a part of a team, what it meant to be developing professionally, understanding kind of how money works out into my life. After high school, I went to Central Michigan University, and admittedly, I had no intentions of going to college because I didn't want to. I hated learning. I hated the idea of college, and I definitely didn't want to go into debt. So despite my judgment, my parents said, "You're going to college." So I did. Well, at Central, I was fortunate to be a member of the Leadership Institute, and really have somebody push me to start thinking about more than what college is used for. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Again, I rushed Phi Kappa Tau in the fall of 2010, held various positions within my fraternity from chaplain to vice president. Really got to understand the battles that some of my brothers were dealing with. And because I was connected to a lot of alumni through my positions, I got to understand a little bit more about life post-college, when the world actually hits you in the face. And it's cliche to say, because you're going to hear it all the time, you don't understand what the world's like when you leave college. And then it happens, and all of a sudden it's real. From undergrad, I took on 2 degrees, mainly answering things and questions I was interested in. So I wasn't one of those people who went into something practical, knowing that it would provide a career, knowing it would provide money. I had a lot of questions I needed to answer. So I took classes and built a major based on what I wanted to understand about human relationships and the world. From there, graduated after taking 6 semesters of 21 credits a semester so I could graduate early. Don't know why the hell I made that decision. But then I kind of bugged out because my brain was so broken from what I was doing to myself. Because in undergrad, I took 21 credits a semester. I was an RA. I was leadership council in my fraternity. I was working at the library, working at a deli, and bartending. So as soon as I graduated, I bugged out for a little bit. I packed up a minivan with a guitar and a bag of clothes, and I started driving with no real intention of where I was going to stop or when to quit or anything like that. So about 3 weeks later, I ended up working in Yellowstone to get more gas money, making more relationships. And that was very unique because it was on an international level and I had nobody. So I had to rely on my relationship ability. So after a couple months of driving around, hanging out, meeting people, I found myself in a town of 900 people in northern Wisconsin in a field that I had nothing to show for because I had zero experience and zero expectation of ever working with teenage males in juvenile correction. So I found myself again in a town where I didn't know anybody of 900 people as a young 20-something with a median population there with an age of around 55 because it was a resort town. So it was quiet. After that experience, about a year and a half working with teenagers, Central Michigan called me back and said, we want to give you the opportunity to get your master's. You can teach on campus, work with students again. We'll pay for it. And I said, of course, if you're going to pay for another degree, I will come back and do that and avoid my student loans for a little longer. Thank you, sir. So I did that for 2 years. And after that, that was pretty great. It was eye-opening. I got to really learn more about my passions and what helped me feel fulfilled in a career, what made me feel good about it, what helped my brain process the different roles we have when we have that professional life and personal life to balance. After grad school and teaching, I ran a cocktail bar. That was one of the biggest learning experiences of my life because I absolutely love bartending. And if I could have any career in the world, I would just sling drinks. The management side, never, ever again. I had learned my lesson. I thought I was ready at the age of 25 to take on that role, balance finances, teach people more about a professional career and develop. I lied to myself. I definitely wasn't ready. And that came with its own different challenges between the 6 inches in my head. From there, I decided I was done with that. So I just quit the job, had no real plan, no real savings. So I knew I needed to find something very quickly. I went from running a cocktail bar to working in insurance and sitting at a computer for 8 to 10 hours a day, absolutely losing my mind. So I did that for about 2.5 years, became wildly successful, had a great 60-year career plan built out, had the retirement plan, had my growth path planned out, could see the raises coming, knowing where I'd be in 5-10 years, and knowing that my life was on track to be successful. In August, I just couldn't do it, so I quit. Again, no plan, but I was so bored doing that and the toll it took on me, I just couldn't keep going, so I quit. My girlfriend looked at me because we lived together, us and our 6 pets, and said, what the hell are you thinking? I don't know, I quit. So on a whim, I contacted a company in Salt Lake City for a marketing job, which is something that I never wanted to do, never had any training in, and never thought I could do it. And first interview was great. It was a group interview. There were like 40 people in it. So I knew I had some competition. For whatever reason, they called me back for a second interview. And in that interview, I got to talk to the owner of the company, and I flat out told him, "You're going to hire me because I have no idea what I'm doing, but there's absolutely nothing that I cannot learn how to do." And that was basically the only thing I said to the owner of this company. And then almost 8 hours later, he called me and said, "Hey, we're going to hire you." And I said, "Why the hell did you hire me? I flat out told you I have no clue what I'm doing. I have no marketing experience. I have no social media experience. I have no graphic design." Said, "Because one, you were completely honest with yourself and me. I appreciated that. And two, you're the only person who's ever said to me, there's nothing you can't learn." And that got me thinking again. So since August, I've taken major steps to really evaluate where my headspace is at and where it needs to be at, and where some of those falters were in my past. Since then, I have started a podcast, a entertainment channel that documents $1 million houses in Michigan and helps realtors sell it. Working in real estate investments, about to buy a neighborhood in East Lansing next to Michigan State University, and have a couple other ventures going. And really, all that is because I quit a job that I hated, started over, not knowing what the heck I was doing. And that's kind of the message that I wanted to bring about this, especially as it comes to mental wellness, or a Wellness Wednesday. So now that we got a little bit of a background and we got that far, I just want to make sure you're tracking with me. We don't have any questions yet. We're not thinking, who the hell is this guy? Is he nuts? I don't trust him. He still looks like a hippie. Cool. So a couple things that I really wanted to bring up, if you couldn't pick up on it, is I'm very upfront about where my mental space is, where it was, and some of those downfalls, and where I like it and need it to be. So with that, I have a couple questions you can answer in the chat bar. You could unmute, do whatever. Why did you rush? Why did you join your fraternity? What was that impulse?
Well, for me, it's like my family, like I'm not like freshman year, I was not the frat type. Like I never, like I rarely, like if I drank, it would be like just with my family. Like I never drank with anyone else. And it's like, they just seemed very intimidating. And it's like, and then when I rushed KDR, like, and I got through it to the end, it was like, you know what? I actually like pushed myself, and it's like, and for that, it's like I've gained more knowledge of like what a true fraternity is like. You know, it's like there's the whole society's like whole intake is like, oh, partying, hazing, all that. And it's like, and learning about these different fraternities here on ASU campus, I got to really see what they were like. And so KDR really just got my attention more, because like they were really wanting to bring out the better gentleman in me. And it's like, and I've always kept that so dearly since I got initiated every step of the way through KDR. And it's like, and I've gained so many connections, and it's like being able to connect with brothers on the East Coast, like never would have thought I would do it, you know. It's like, and then I really proved my family wrong. And it's like, if you put your mind to it, it's like you can do it, you know. If you have confidence in yourself, no matter whatever other people say, you can do it and you can succeed. And so that's what really kept me going through pledgeship, and it's like kept me going through every step of the way since 2018. And so it's like really proving my family wrong. Is like, I can do it and I can change myself. And it's like I can stick with myself and how I was freshman year, and I can help change people, because I mean, a lot of people talk to me, and so it's like, hey, I can help you. So yeah, that's why I joined.
Nice. Does anybody else want to share?
I'll share. So freshman year, nobody really knows this from KDR, but I was going to join Pike. I accepted a bid from Pike, and after like a week, I like just knew it wasn't for me. So then I didn't want to be Greek, but KDR really didn't like give up, but they kept like trying to hang out with me, inviting me to the house, going to different events on campus. And I had recently moved from out of state, so I didn't have a lot of friends. So I was looking for that void, and KDR filled it. But at the end of the day, I'm glad I left Pike for KDR.
Nice. When I accepted my bid, I also had bids with SAE and Beta Theta Pi. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Does anybody else want to talk about why you joined KDR?
Sure, I can go. I joined when I was a junior. So freshman and sophomore year, I was very anti-Greek life. There was nothing that I saw that was positive in my experience. And part of that was from family being like, just stupid people getting together and doing stupid things, right? So very much listening to what was out there, right? And not making my own decision. And so as I was, going through, college and experiencing life and finding myself and all that stuff, I really felt like there was something missing. And what it came down to was just the genuine relationship with guy friends, right? I looked around, I was a theater minor, so I did not have a lot of guy friends that I had. And so a lot of the people that I made friends with were in KDR, and they invited me to events and things like that. And it was actually my big brother over the summer before my junior year, when I was an orientation leader. We'd have all these, sharing circles and things like that. And he would not stop talking about KDR and how transformative it was for him. And I was like, okay, let me come to your events the next semester, see what it's all about. And what I quickly found out was that it was a place where I could be myself, right? And it was a lot of different people on various spectrums, various identities, various expressions, and I think that is what sold it for me was, oh, wow, I've never experienced this before. I feel like I can be myself 100%. And it really did start that journey for me to kind of understand who I was and really bring me out my shell. So, yeah, I joined first semester junior year and quickly, went on the fast track of working for nationals, I guess. So it all worked out in the end, but so that's my story.
Right on. So,
Working for your headquarters twice.
Twice. I started left and then came back. Yeah.
right on. I've done that in plenty of jobs. So
I can relate to something Bryan said. Conceptually, I wanted to look at fraternities because I wanted the chance to interact with other guys. I had all sisters, all my cousins, first cousins and second cousins are all females. So I like the idea of trying out fraternities. Looking around, I was impressed with KDR specifically, both the feeling in the house and the guys. And then after I joined, it was literally an island. It was my own home in a very large campus. To have a home base, to have brothers. Now I have national brotherhood. But yeah, the initial thing was to see how I could interact with other guys.
Awesome. So the reason I ask that question specifically is to see if there's a theme in why we make these decisions and where we need to recognize this elsewhere. And one of the things that stuck out most learning about your organization is the phrase memories of their maturity. And to me, it sounds like it's all that positive experience that we're looking back on. And what questions like these do and where they can be applied throughout is to show a storytelling ability that we naturally have or have been taught through our, kind of maturation process. Because one of my biggest philosophies when it comes to changing my perspective in my head comes from a great book called The Truth About Stories. And the theme of this book is that the truth about stories is that's all that we are. So when I asked that question, each of you who shared, you weren't telling me something to convince me, you weren't telling me anything to try to sway me one way or another, but you were trying to paint a story to explain your experience. And that's the emotional factor that we really gain to. And how I bring this kind of philosophy, because this is from a history book. This isn't like self-help. This isn't, critical thinking. This was a history book. And how I brought that into my daily practice of mental health is to really think about the story that I wanted to create. Because my story for joining Phi Kappa Tau, I let you know I started working when I was 13. How that happened is on my 13th birthday, my dad picked me up from school and said, "Hey, we're going to go get you a job." We drove to the golf course and I started working. There was no discussion about it. It was there. From there, I pretty much had a high school experience where somebody was creating my story for me, whether it was my parents, my teachers, my mentors, my friend group. I wasn't really trying to do anything. So when I got to college, I had somebody in my life recently leave me at that point. And I decided I was going to change the script on my story so I could really figure out who I was going to become. And I did that by doing something nobody thought I would do and rushing a fraternity. And if you know anything about Central Michigan, it has the reputation of being a very openly spoken party school. The things I saw my first weekend there are things that I dare not repeat in any place of professionalism. So joining a fraternity in that area, in that kind of mind frame, was really the first step I took in understanding how mental wellness really plays into storytelling. And that didn't happen for years after, but it was the first time in my life I knew I was actively making that choice. The issue is I didn't ask myself why I was doing that until years and years later when somebody asked me in a job interview, "Why did you decide that?" And I had no answer. So really that truth about stories mentality is realizing that we are the gatekeepers to the narrative we're telling ourselves, as well as the narrative we're portraying to others, because there's options we have, there's opinions we can control, there's things that we can make a change to. And a lot of times we're told, it's just the way the world works, it's just this. But understanding that storyteller mentality, that gatekeeper, as a daily practice of creating the image you want to see, that was huge. And that was huge for me. That was huge for my brothers when I was their chaplain. And working that into a mental health profession, that was awesome. So really, I'm trying to keep some of these short because I know we're on time. But that was the first time that I really looked back and felt, I'm qualified to take control of my own thoughts, create my own story. And if I wasn't okay with something, i.e. the person not knowing who I was, leaving high school and wanting to understand that was also the first time in my life where I decided it was okay to drop everything and start over. I had people call me something different. I tried to make changes to live a different narrative. Whether that was in the best mental health practice for my age and maturity at the time, questionable. But looking back, and some of the decisions I did make to influence future choices were huge. The next time I really took that opportunity just to quit what I was doing and start something over, still not feeling completely okay with that. And that's one of those things that we all learn at a different pace. After graduation for my undergrad, I wanted to get away from everybody I knew because I had this feeling that I wasn't going to be able to mature the way I needed to if I was still with my friends, my brothers, my family. So I will tell you, there are better ways to do this than packing up a minivan and driving away. There are much more responsible ways to do this. You can get a career, move somewhere else, but I wasn't ready for that. And that really brings up the second point in my life where I had to make the choice of not really being happy or satisfied with the narrative that I was living out and telling myself, or starting a new chapter, not thinking about what could go wrong and thinking about what if it goes right. So the second time in my life, I took a huge chance and did something nobody thought I was capable of doing. I abandoned my entire support systems to go find myself, whether it was in a van or moving to Wisconsin. So you're starting to see a bit of a theme here, and I'm one of those individuals who will stop and start something. You know, on the flip of a coin, I'll get out of town and do what I need to do. But I hope by the end of some of these stories, it really ties it home on some of the later themes. In Wisconsin, as I mentioned, I started working in mental health, which at 23, I went from being 23 single with zero responsibilities. I had a minivan and a month-long lease in an apartment. Overnight, I became the legal representative for 19 teenagers in a town where I didn't know anybody, had zero friends, and work was all I was there to do. So in that field of working with teenagers, I worked with individuals who had cognitive differences, were abandoned by their parents, ran away, were truant, criminal delinquents, drug addiction, and anything of the like. 3 weeks working there, I had a 13-year-old bring a knife into the facility and try to stab me. And it was the first time in my life where I really needed a mental check. And, you know, it's kind of understandable for that circumstance, but it was truly the first time where I took a second to evaluate my career choices, my personal choices, and really what was the purpose of what I was doing. Why would I spend my time helping somebody who wants to stab me? So I took probably 72 hours without talking to work, without anything, and really took a look. And it was the first time I asked myself, why? Why am I doing this? To get to a deeper level. So it was that intentional question. So Kaylor, I don't know if you're still here. Yep, there you are. When I first asked you why you rushed, the first thing you told me about was all the things you got from it. And that is the what. And it's important to make that designation because answering what is a very easy question to do, whether it's personally or professionally. Answering why is a much more difficult question because you can ask why as many times in a row as you want, and there's still more information you need to get out. So that why is what I was really getting at, because you might disagree, and if you do, let me know in the chat. I don't think you can ask why in a future tense mentality or even a present tense at times, because why, we need that reflective brain, something that turns off. And oftentimes why comes with the biggest lessons I learned when a kid pulled a knife on me. I came back from dropping this resident off at a home visit, and we got 3 steps into the group home when he turned and pulled a buck knife on me. And the first thing I did was just step back and wait. Just kind of stood there. And what my resident did, other than cuss at me quite a bit, was ask me, what are you doing? Aren't you going to take it? What are you doing? And I said, I don't know how to react right now. And I just let it be at that. Fortunately for me, because I'm still here with all my person, that caused him to drop the knife and other staff members came in. But it was the first time I saw the power in not knowing how to react and taking that breath. So that's two themes that I started to build on. Is it's okay to start over, not knowing what's going on, and taking that breath to think about it. So I needed that mental check after that experience to take that breath, learn how to react, and go back to work, knowing there was a bigger purpose to this and still trying to answer that why I was doing this to make sense of it and make that story. The third big thing I had to go through was loving what I was doing because I was helping children. I was genuinely giving value. I was teaching lessons. I was truly making a difference. What nobody knew is I was taking that work home with me too, in the form of bottles of whiskey, this fine green plant, and other things. Because even though I was doing great things at work, I still didn't understand the purpose or the why behind I was doing it. So I would take that home because I couldn't justify the purpose of what I was doing, hearing some of these stories that I heard, trying to make sense of why somebody else's life was where it was. And the only thing we could teach them is that they're in control of their reaction to it, even though they weren't in control of that circumstance. And that's where I started to really plummet. You know, I was being super successful, making a difference, and genuinely drinking a fifth a night to fall asleep and waking up and going to work with kids. Not the healthiest decision. And that is one of the biggest learning moments is I had every opportunity and every sign that I needed to say, you need to start considering where you're at with your career, what you're doing, and what the purpose and why of what you're doing it is. And I was not at an age or a place in my life to really consider that. So one of the things that really stuck with me from that situation, because it frankly changed my life, on top of being open to starting over and asking those whys and really starting to search for that meaning, is seeking opportunity and saying yes to it. Because so many people in the profession that I work in marketing, ask the question of what if it doesn't work out, or what's in the budget? And I don't know why. It's probably a mentor I had, but I never really stuck with that mentality, because what if it worked out the way I wanted it to? Where would I be then? So when that happened and I was at that super low point, I was fortunate to get a call from Central Michigan to say, hey, we want you to come back. You can work on this research project. We'll get you covered. And all I had to do was say yes. And there's a great quote from a philosopher who's getting a little flack in the media right now. Dr. Seuss wrote in one of his seminars, sometimes the questions are easy and the answers are hard. And that's one that really stuck with me as I was starting to learn how to think about my brain and why I needed to think about my brain. And Kaylor, not to keep picking on you, man, but what was the easier answer? To talk about what you got out of rushing or why you rushed?
Oh, what got me into rushing?
Yeah. So as I thought more about that, it really started to make sense to me in grad school of how I can use this thing in my head to really get to where I want to be and change the story and that narrative of how I view the world. And it was seeking out those hard answers to simple questions. I was fortunate to have a very good upbringing. My father was a self-owned salesman, He did very well for himself for most of my childhood. But what that really did for my brother and I, because he traveled a lot, and the things we saw were him being social and making sales in our family time. And my brother and I both have this. We can go to a bar, sit down, talk to anybody, and leave having that person convinced we're the most successful person they've ever met. Whether that's true or not, that's the ability and the gift we got from being a salesman. What I had to figure out in my head was how to tell the harder narrative of the questions I actually need to answer. How did I feel waking up today, and why did I feel that way? How is this impacting my attitude today? How is my attitude impacting those around me? Despite my qualifications, why am I qualified to do anything that I'm doing? And that was a tough ask of myself to do during grad school when I'm supposed to be a teacher, supposed to be a mentor, and things like that. So what I want you to think about is, if in a job interview, you were asked the question, why should I pay you this much money? How would you take that question to justify it? Would you immediately talk about your qualifications, your degree, your leadership roles? Would you immediately talk about your prior work experience, your dedicated company first mentality? Would you talk about these times in the past when you've saved an organization money? Would you talk about how you restructured maybe rush materials to make it more social and friendly for P&Ms? Or would you talk about something that drives you? And I ask that question because the most important thing that's happened to me in the last 6 months is being a part of a national training. And I work primarily with service companies, so plumbers, HVAC, electricians. I work with people who have great skills and society, for whatever reason, forgot about for like 10 to 15 years. And now we need them more than ever. We need more people in that career. Somebody asked me, why does your boss pay you? And fortunately, with the prior lessons of creating narratives, taking that second to reflect and really searching for that why, I was able to provide this person. My boss pays me because I'm the only person here who's willing to learn anything that the company needs me to learn and motivate other people to get on board with it. And that was exactly it, because they took that back to my boss in this training session and said, he was basically like, yeah, he was the only candidate who said he was willing to look at himself and where he can improve with the confidence to do it. And that was the first time that I really understood the why of what I'm doing with my life and how my brain is tying things together. And this is after working in mental health. This is after studying mental health and helping write articles with it. This is after going back for a master's in communication to better understand human behavior, understand crisis and conflict, understand how organizations deal with that and teach internal messages. It was the first time I really tied in what gets me clicking and what gets me motivated. And it was that opportunity to learn something and facilitate somebody to that aha moment. And that's not the same for everybody. That doesn't get everybody going, but it was the first time that I was challenged to really think about the why behind what I'm doing and how to get there in a better way. So that was a huge lesson, because somebody asked me to validate myself beyond what you could see on a resume and at the core of what's driving me forward. So if you can't figure it out by now, I think asking why is the greatest question in the world and one of the hardest things to do, because I generally feel that I have no clue what I'm doing in any of my professional endeavors, any of my businesses that I'm trying to start. But it's being able to create that narrative of what happens when this all works out. Why do I need to do this? and really understanding the value in saying yes to opportunity, because so many people miss that and don't realize that there's life to be made and dollars to be made by saying yes to something that comes your way. Because those what ifs and those mental blocks, those preconditioned biases that we have will turn us off. And it's ironic that most of us who join fraternities say, I never would have done this. I wasn't really a frat guy. Granted, we always correct them to say fraternity man, always. But how many people have that same story of, I never would have thought I could do this, and then I did it? And that's really powerful. Yeah, Kaylor, I see you. So there's a couple practical ways to use some of those ideas I've talked about. And one of those is always asking the 5 whys. If you've been to any type of professional coaching seminar, I'm sure you've heard of the 5 whys. But if you haven't, wave at the screen or something real quick, and I'll break that down for you real quick. Awesome. Bob, so the 5 whys, in addition to me asking why multiple times throughout my life and now encouraging you to do so, the 5 whys is a method of thinking about anything in life to get to the core purpose of what an issue is or the meaning of what you're doing. And the example that I love is the Washington Monument, because it's practical and it kind of makes some ties into the personal side of it too. The Washington Monument, because of the bricks it's made out of, when you expose it to materials to clean it, the bricks will deteriorate. But for it to be presentable and a tourist attraction, it has to stay clean and pristine, because you're not going to have people from all over the world come to check out the Washington Monument if it has bird shit all over it. So the first question, why is it an issue, or why is the Washington Monument deteriorating? Like I said, when you apply cleaning chemicals to those stones, they deteriorate. Second, why are we applying these harmful chemicals to this monument of our history? Well, because it's covered in bird shit and we need to get that off for the tourists. Oh, so why are birds defecating on this? Well, because when birds eat, they, build it up, they release it, and it happens to be on the monument. Well, why is it going on the monument, and why are they choosing this location? Because at night there's a bunch of bugs flying around the monument, so the birds come in to eat them. That's, Darwinism. It's a beautiful thing, right? It's an easy explanation. Well, why are the bugs there? Well, because every night they stayed up and late for tourists to come. So what they would do is shine floodlights on the Washington Monument. So like a bug to a light, the bugs would come, hang out, the birds would come, eat the bugs, do their thing on the monument. Then we had to clean it. So why do we talk about this story? Because if we're trying to understand why the monument needs $1 billion in renovations and we're still going to destroy it because that's what the chemicals do, what's the better solution? Is it keep investing the money to clean it and destroy it, eventually having to rebuild it? Or is it to turn off the lights, get rid of the bugs, get rid of the birds, get rid of the poop, get rid of the chemicals? Because now that's not the problem. So the 5 whys is a method of really breaking down and understanding your processes and your solutions, both professionally, personally. It works in relationships, it works in your own brain, but it's a philosophy and a practice of being intentional with your questions to not run away from the core issue. For me, it was not being able to balance my emotions and attachment to the teenagers I was working with, and not feeling I had resources to open up about it, even though I was working in mental health, and not really understanding why I was doing very much. I was doing it because that narrative was you go to school, you get a job, happily ever after, retirement, 401k, blah, blah, blah. And then I found out I didn't give a shit about money. I didn't care about it. I'm the worst business partner in the world because I tell people I'll do it for free when somebody's telling me I could charge $1,400 for it. It's, for me, it was understanding I need to get to that other level of I'm motivated by learning something and getting other people to that aha moment. And we do that by asking these questions of why, practicing those 5 whys. And it's a beautiful thing when you turn that into your daily practice because it starts to work. So I really don't have much more. I'm sure I could keep rambling for hours because I have the gift of gab. But the core of what I really try to do with the groups that I work with, because I get this a lot given my field. I didn't go to college, so I don't have that opportunity, or I didn't think about that. I tell people all the time, there's nothing I learned in college that I couldn't have learned on my own. And if you've ever seen the movie Good Will Hunting, he's got a fantastic quote in it where some Harvard grad student tells him his kids or he's going to end up serving his kids fries. And Will Hunting says, at least I won't be unoriginal, and goes on to say, you just spent $150,000 on a college education that you could have got for $1.50 in late charges at the library. So what my goal in my personal life, my professional life, is helping people facilitate that aha moment. And whether that's getting them to the love of learning that I have and the confidence to learn something, or helping them ask that question of why are you doing this? Why do you want to do this? Why do you keep doing this? It's really helping people understand the why for what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, we've all heard it a million times, and it's definitely not untrue. Success isn't about finances. Success is about fulfillment and being happy. And even people like Gary Vee, if you've heard of him with VaynerMedia, super popular right now and inspiring young professionals. His big message is, if you're happy earning $50,000 a year and spending more time with your family, you're more successful than I am. So it's really thinking about how we define success, how we define wellness, and how we define, our story. And right now, I'm sure it'll change in the next 6 months. My mentality is creating that story, saying yes to those opportunities, asking why, and understanding that my definition of success isn't going to be $1 billion, because it's that sense of fulfillment, because those are the positive things I want to bring home to my professional life, my personal life, and to everybody I meet. So if you have questions, please let me know. I'm available as long as you are.
No, I really did appreciate this. It's like you definitely like helped me like get into a different perspective, because like for me it's like me going into the work of social worker, like yes, we get overlooked so much and we get underpaid for the amount of work that we put into helping the mental health of everyone. And so it's like asking the whys is like, it's really unique, because like a lot of my professors are telling me is like, don't ask why, because it seems so intrusive in their life. And so it's like, and they tell us is like, find a way. It's like, tell me a little bit about this problem, or it's like, tell me a little bit about yourself, you know what I mean? It's like it, and it's like how you were explaining it, it's like, wow, it's like, let me just start using why now. I was like, let's do it.
I definitely wouldn't discredit your professors, because why can be a very invasive question.
Mm-hmm.
But what I might suggest, and you can write this off if you want, when you're trying to help somebody understand a why who's giving you resistance to why as a question, you can say things like, did you notice this entire time you talked about creating human relationships? You're providing them that option to say, I didn't think about that. Or, well, yeah, because that's important to me. And you can help define that why without phrasing those intrusive questions.
Yeah. Ugh, deep, man. That's deep. I was like, man, you're my new best friend.
Well, it's amazing too, because when you start to think about things that way, you can get people to really open their eyes without doing very much. So, Irving, you got a second? What are you
Yes.
passionate about, man? Do you got any hobbies?
Hobbies.
Yeah.
I enjoy playing tennis, hanging out with my friends, and working for KDR. I feel like KDR is my hobby.
Right on. Well, it's super fortunate that you can work for your hobby. I mean, that's
Mhm.
that's something so many people strive for. So that was a pretty irrelevant question, and I'm glad you shared that information. But what I was looking for is how that question made you respond, because the first thing you did was smile, raise your eyebrows, and lean in, because we got to talk about something that we were comfortable talking about, we knew something about, and we had some energy about. So that's another level of how these questions work, is why was that different than me talking about work or something like that? Because it was genuine. So you can get to the core of these questions if you're trying to use it in a practical way without having to ask why. You can find a lot of meaning just by learning how to ask the right questions.
Absolutely, I agree.
And it's something we train a lot of technicians on. Is this is a whole different subject about human power struggles and things like that, is we want to feel like we're in control of certain things. Teaching our technicians that we work with that the person asking the most questions is generally the person in control of the conversation and control of themselves. So it's a beautiful practice to get into that.
I was gonna ask, like, how would you approach the conversation to like undergrad fraternity men, like about mental health and letting them know that like it is okay to talk about it? I feel like a
Yeah.
big issue for them is like, I don't want to talk about it. It makes me look soft, blah 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 blah. But it becomes too late sometimes.
Sure. And you know, being a fraternity man, it's something we're very versed in, and we're taught to look out for these signs in such a fashion that it's taboo to talk about, because so many of our other messages are uh, masculine, or we talk a lot about honor, we talk a lot about pride, we talk a lot about dignity. And one of the big things I saw as chaplain, because in my group, chaplain was the keeper of the ritual. You know, we led initiations, we led every pre-initiation ritual. We really kept up our code and tried to understand our ritual to the best that we can. And bringing up that conversation to the standards that we have being high, being very dedicated to ourselves and mental health, it makes it a very difficult dichotomy, because it's almost like we set up for failure because we have certain unattainable standards through our ritual. Where I found success in working with undergrads, from teaching to leadership roles in Greek life, was helping them talk about what their impression was on that standard that we had, and where they felt they were succeeding and where we could improve it. And I would approach that as the theme that I've been saying, is helping people create that story and that narrative, and not being uncomfortable with asking why about certain things. I guess more specifically, I would approach it from a standpoint of, 20 years ago, we still had these issues. We had mental health issues. We had anxiety. We had people on medications. We had all these things that we literally didn't talk about until recently. So that narrative that we've been believing might need to be retold. And when you understand your power to change that narrative, I think it's more comfortable to talk about. And that answer comes from working with teenage males who were truly in some of the worst conditions they've had, not understanding that story. But I think we're at a point where we need to be more persistent with it and okay sharing that. And that's why I'm upfront about my struggles and my philosophies with anybody. Is there any way I can make that more specific for you? I know that
No, that was good.
I think if you make the mediums to do it as well, so within KDR, if you can make the mediums and the ability for people to reach out and talk about that more accessible, that's definitely a way to do it. One way that I've seen it done within workplaces is anonymous chats, an email box, definitely things like this where we get to talk about these ideas. And one of the biggest things is accessibility, because the more you're put in front of it, the more you're going to be forced to consider it, whether it's conscious or unconscious. That's the practical message, I think, for change, is getting it in front of people and making sure you have people there to champion it when the rest of the population is like, this is frustrating, change is stupid, nothing was broken with the old way, you know, I didn't even realize, or I don't need to talk about this, I'm mentally strong. So when you have those champions who can make that change and the availability and accessibility to that information, it's going to make it a lot easier. Even just looking at your organization's website, there's a lot of messages about that, and being a champion for young individuals, being a student first. But with all fraternity websites, especially probably mine, the parents and mental health section it almost falls by the wayside. So it's really how we think about getting that information in front of the people who actually need it, and getting somebody in the chapters to support that. And it'll always help to have somebody in the chapter do that versus an individual school's Greek board, because there's always going to be that headbutt with, you know, your board of governors or whatever, however it's set up for you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
Yeah, and if you want to have any conversations in the future where we can ask more specific questions or get into a little bit more detail on some of the things that I talk about or work with my technicians, or with some of the organizations I work with in my community, you can ask Shelby for any of my contact information. I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody.
Thank you again, Ryan. And thanks
Thank you.
everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Hope you have a good night.
Thank you so much.